Welcome to the Global Resilience Exchange YouTube channel. My name is Doniella McKoy, and today I have the pleasure of hosting Margaret Millett. She is going to offer us her experience in the field and so many gems. So I'm super excited to get started. Margaret, thanks for joining. Walk us through your journey into business continuity and resilience. This is your time to shine. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Danielle, for having me on. Well, I am originally from Massachusetts, and I got my career started in business continuity management at Scudder Stevens and Clark. The company no longer exists. It was privately held and got acquired by Zurich Financial, and it's now folded into Deutsche Bank. But I always remember we were doing a big move to go from a couple of buildings in downtown Boston onto the waterfront. These brand new buildings were being designed, and somebody asked me to put together this thing, as I called it back then, this continuity plan. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll help with this big project move. And I got asked to put together what I'll say the who, what, why, where, when, and how for doing an office move. And it was taking place over 2 weekends. And I was in my 20s and I was like, I've already got a vacation booked and I'm not giving up my vacation for this big move. And so they're like, no worries, we'll have, teams available and we'll have hotlines and all these people to help out. And I got back from my vacation and everyone was like, wow, that was a great document you put together. And, we knew everything that we needed to do in order to be successful and we knew who to contact while you were not available. And 6 months later, a job opened up in this field of business continuity management at the company, and I applied for it, and I have never looked back. So I really started to get involved with business continuity management. However, back in the day, Daniela, when I started in this industry, it's like you needed to go to face-to-face conference like DRJ to go meet people, go build your network, and then get that binder to take home for the materials because no offense, the internet wasn't available. Yes, I'm sounding like a dinosaur, but I needed the binders and I needed to have that network so I could literally pick up the phone and call somebody. Um, so that was exciting and did a lot of great work. And then I decided, hey, I need to move on. So I went to work for Sun Life of Canada. They had an office outside of Boston. I went to work for them to do Y2K. And so that was really cool just to be able to go work with all these people to make sure that, again, the systems were going to be not go bump in the night because everyone was wondering were the lights still going to stay on and, were the applications going to run. And I don't think people realize that it wasn't just babysitting the applications for just that one day. You had to babysit them all throughout 2000 to make sure that nothing went wrong, as well as into Q1 of 2001 because of tax season and everything. And I always remember the CTO said, "Wow, that went so well. I'm not sure whether we need disaster recovery and business continuity anymore." And I was freaking out because I was trying to save money to go buy a house and all these other things. And, we all kind of live paycheck to paycheck. But I was like, okay, I think I need to go get another job because I'm not sure whether my name's going to get on a list. So then I went to work for John Hancock. And I was running disaster recovery, doing all this work with the folks doing IT recovery and working with some of the businesses and crisis management and doing these big disaster recovery tests at SunGuard and work area recovery exercises at SunGuard outside of Boston. And then the CEO at John Hancock decided he wanted to sweeten his honeypot. And then he decided to outsource all of IT to IBM. And I was in IT, so I had to go reapply for my job at IBM along with others on my team. And some of us got hired at IBM, some of us were retained by John Hancock, and others were let go. But for me, what was really interesting is I was the only one that was hired to go support the entire John Hancock account for IBM. And I was not living in the city anymore, so I needed to be on a schedule to get into the office and get home every night. This is before laptops, and really we had cell phone technology as we know it today. And I had a permanent knot in my back, Danielle, from the stress because I'd have people coming by saying, "Hey, Margaret, could you do this? Could you do that?" And I'd be like, "Daniela, could you fill out this form, please?" and, and so then that was really stressful. And then I had an opportunity then to go to work for Investors Bank and Trust. And so I said yes. So I literally had the same commute, just walked across the street to a different building. And while I was there, the head of resiliency said to me, "Hey, would you be interested in going to Europe to help run the EMEA division?" And I said, "Yes, sign me up." So I had an opportunity to go live in Dublin, Ireland for 2 years. And so I said yes to that assignment. And while I was there, I remember it was the first time that the Super Bowl had been held in February. The next day, we found out that the company had been sold to State Street Corporation. And so I was like, okay, what does this mean for me? Because here I am, an expat living overseas and, all these things. And I knew most of the people at State Street just because, again, the great network that we had in the greater Boston area. And at the same time, Doniella, no sooner had I arrived in Ireland than the gentleman who had been the chief information security officer while I was at Sun Life of Canada was calling me from California. And he's like, hey, would you come to work at eBay? And I was like, Dave, I just got to Ireland. I can't leave just yet. So I always remember I was like, okay, maybe now I need to evaluate whether I should go to California or not because I thought I could lose my shirt financially going to work in London. So I said yes. I went to work in California. I went out to eBay in San Jose, California. And for 6 years, I helped run their business continuity, disaster recovery, and assisted with crisis management at a very dynamic time when they were acquiring about 25 companies. And it was just how do we do the rinse and repeat? We had a tech refresh going on because they were trying to get out of data centers in California due to earthquakes. Um, my life took a turn in 2013, and I decided I needed to get back to the East Coast for personal reasons. So in early 2014, I moved back to the East Coast. I didn't have a job, and then I needed to get a job. So I went to work for MetLife in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was running business continuity and disaster recovery for them and for about 45 countries and had a great team, and we were rocking and rolling and got a new CEO. And then it just became one of those things. And after 2019, Daniela, people's names just got on lists. And all of a sudden, my name got on a list in 2021. We're in
Mm.
COVID, and we had done an awesome job running COVID at MetLife. And then all of a sudden, I'm out in the job market during COVID. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting looking for a job during a pandemic. And then luckily, I got hired by corporate Uber, and I was running business continuity for them worldwide for 65 countries. And had another great team, small but mighty team, as I always say, because that's pretty much what you always have in business continuity.
Oh,
And
yes.
then they decided they didn't need business continuity, so they got rid of me and the entire team, which I was kind of dumbfounded about, meaning I don't know how a regulated entity cannot have business continuity folks. Plus, a lot of companies I've worked at, we've been the value add of closing deals for clients or doing those renewals. And then I was out of work and I was trying to look for a job during an election year, and I've never looked for a job during an election year, which was also just very interesting and going out there. And I'll never forget. I got told when I was job interviewing by a few big companies um, that they weren't sure why I was applying for their company based on my skill set, and they thought that I would be a flight risk that I wouldn't stay with them, so they didn't hire me. So I think I was being used to be pitched up against somebody else so that they could hire the other person that they wanted to get. Or I also interviewed with some people I had used to work with for a disaster recovery job. And I got told I didn't know disaster recovery, Daniela, even though I had run it at MetLife and I had run it at eBay. So after that, I decided, I think I'm going to go into business for myself. And I started Seamless Horizon about a year and a half ago. And that has been my very rewarding and fulfilling career journey, and one that I would never exchange in a minute.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for all of that. I think it's so important for people to hear the pit stops, the pillars, the plot twist that comes in this industry. It's never a one lane journey in this field, in this industry. And he talked about Y2K, and I remember I think I was in grade school at that time, and I remember feeling so good because I filled up like 2 jugs of water and I put it outside just in case the power went out. And looking back, I was like, really? 2 jugs of water for a family of four, Daniela? Knowing what I know now, it's totally different. But yeah, that was definitely a memorable experience, I think, for a lot of people, whether you were in the field or not. So thanks for reminding us of, how far we've come.
Yeah.
Um, in moments of uncertainty or chaos, what anchors you personally as a leader?
Um, I think the main thing that you have to remember, this is a job. and I'm not saying that in the way it sounded. I mean, I take my career very seriously. But I'm hired because I am a subject matter expert in business continuity management. I've hired the right people on my team that we are trying to do the best we can based on the resources that we have available. And so I learned very on early in my career that I could work morning, noon, and night. And sometimes I'm not going to reap the rewards of getting promoted, getting the big bonus, etc. And I have said this to a lot of people in my career. There are 24 hours in a day. And if you do the math, you should have 8 hours technically sleeping, 8 hours working, and 8 hours living. And I'm going to give my all and plus. I'm going to give 110%. And when it's a big event like a pandemic or a major event, I'm giving you 200%. But at the end of the day, I have to have a work-life balance, and it's very important that I try and do that with my team because again, this is my job, it's my career, but it is not my life. And that's where I try and tell people you do have to know when to say, this is it. I'm not going to be the CEO that's got to go answer to the board. I'm giving you everything I can to make you be more resilient. And therefore, I feel it's important that people understand that this is a job and it's a means to help you have that life. And if that company is not willing to understand that, well, then I hate to say this, then maybe it's time for you to reevaluate whether you need to stay or go.
Things, yeah, work-life balance it's tough but necessary.
Yeah.
You may have alluded to this already, but what is the greatest investment that you've made in yourself?
Um, I'm going to say it's getting educated about business continuity management, Daniela. And I still think that's a struggle for people within this profession, even though I've been in this field for 30 years. We've made strides in the academic setting. However, I don't know of anybody that has an associate degree or a bachelor's degree in business continuity management, or it's very, at least I don't know of a university. Maybe somebody needs to educate me, no pun intended. We have master's degrees in it. But to me, when I got into this field, I remember I wanted to get certified so that I could understand what are the principles that I needed to know about. So I got certified from the Business Continuity Institute out of the UK back in the day. I also got certified from Disaster Recovery Institute International. My certification numbers for those institutions are so low that it's kind of like, oh, how old is she? My BCI certification number is 510, and my DRI number is 610. I have valued getting my certifications because I knew the foundations to go build a program that have stood me well. I believed in this industry, and so therefore I wanted to get more involved. So I started to volunteer for New England Disaster Recovery Information Exchange. It went by the acronym of NEDRIX. And a lot of people don't realize this, but in Boston, you can have people coming in from 5 out of the 6 New England states to make up the workforce. You might not get people from Vermont because that's too far of a commute. But if you have people coming in from 5 states, you do have to worry about what's happening. Like Daniela and I were talking about this big snowstorm that's hit the Northeast corridor before we started this recording. How are you getting your workforce into downtown Boston? Because some people might not have snow, others have 30 inches of snow today. So you got to understand how that all works. And then the other thing is I also got involved with trying to look at the certifications, the criterias that were going to be put into the certifications. When I first started volunteering with Disaster Recovery Institute International, oh gosh, over 25 years ago, they only had two certifications, the CBCP and the MBCP. And while I was there, I reviewed the applications for people who are submitting things to get certified. I also helped build out some of the certifications that they have today. And then when I moved to Ireland, I got very involved with the BCI. They had an Ireland chapter. I got involved there. And then I got asked by the folks in the UK to participate in their corporate governance committee that they were forming. And then when I came back stateside to California to go to work at eBay, I was at a conference, a DRJ conference, and some other folks were saying, hey, we really need to get a stronger presence here for the BCI in the US. So we formed the first BCI US chapter. And I served with them for about 6 years. And then I got involved with Women in Resilience. I have done some global judging for the BCI and some other organizations. I've contributed to four-ish editions of the Good Practice Guide for the BCI. And so, when you get involved, you then really want to make sure that you are giving back to make sure that the profession is only getting better. And I'm grateful for people like yourself who offer these types of learning opportunities for people to know, like, I'm not alone if I feel like I'm the only one that's struggling with something, and that there is a network out there to help you get through tough times at your job, or if you're out seeking new employment opportunities.
That's really a big deal, right? The education piece, the certification piece, but then the community piece. So I heard a bunch of things there, and I think those are all very crucial to a successful career. Resilience, continuity, crisis management, IT, listen, it's important for all professionals. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Okay. If you could leave the audience with one continuity or operational resilience mindset principle to apply this month, what would it be?
Uh, I'm going to say learn something new. Because I always remember I had a 10th grade English teacher, and back then you're reading these what you would consider as a 10th grader, these boring books, but they were classic literature, and it's like you got to read it and you got to know your material to go get ready for the quiz and then write the report or whatever. But he always said learn something new every day, and back then I'm like, yeah, whatever, Mr. Williamson. But it stuck with me as an adult that I have to learn something new every day. And I'm going to say this, we are very fortunate in our profession, Doniella, that we have so many webinars that we can go tap into through our vendors and through our associations. And there are lots of white papers from the vendors as well as the other associations. So take some time. Like I always tell people, Friday afternoons are a good time because hopefully your people are cleaning out their inbox and stuff like that. But you should carve out an hour on your calendar every Friday or whatever day of the week works for you to go participate in a webinar or go listen to something that you had signed up for but couldn't attend, or go read a white paper, because you need to keep learning. And you can think like, hey, I am an expert on AI, but you go read somebody else's perspective on what they're doing with AI and you'll be like, wow, I never thought of it in that manner. So I'm
Totally.
going to challenge everybody to go out and do something, set some time aside for yourself to go learn something new.
All right. On that thought process of learning something new, what's one lesson from your work that others could apply to help their organization thrive through disruption?
Um, I do think it's important to remind the folks in your organization and your leadership team that we are prepared and that you are the insurance policy for your company because you put together these plans. They've been exercised, they've been tested. Let's use them. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because we want to use that. And remember that you want to make sure that your organization knows that you have the right people in place to help get the company back up on their feet. And always challenge what they want to exercise. Hypothetically, you know, you don't need to do a blizzard scenario with the folks that live in New England. They know how to handle the snow. I mean, granted, we haven't had a big snowstorm in a while in New England, but it's in the DNA of people that live there. Challenge them to go exercise something that they thought that could never happen to them, or something that's happened to their competitor, or something that's happened in another part of the world, to get them ready for it. I think that we sometimes get complacent that we're ready, we know everything. But what I'm gonna say is, spice it up, jazz it up, do something different, because you want to make sure that you're really pushing that limit, and make sure you are doing something with your executives because they also need to have that level of confidence of what's there. And so getting them ready for when something happens, the better prepared they are, the better off you are. And also make sure that if you have to go do something with your leadership team, that it's you and your team that are doing it. I love consultants. I'm now in that role. However, if I come into your organization and I interview everybody, Danielle, and I go run an exercise with the executive leadership team, I'm gone. If you have an incident in May, they're not going to be like, well, where's Margaret? It's Danielle that's going to be helping guide them through. So make sure that your leadership team is utilizing your team to the fullest and beyond potential.
Yeah, that's great. Everyone can use some help, right? Consultants definitely fill the gaps. And as you know, sometimes we are thin in numbers for our department. So but yeah, there has to you're the person, you're the one who's hired, you're the one they're going to turn to. And so building those relationships are critical. And
Yes.
it can't go out the door even in times of leanness, we'll say.
Yeah, because I'm going to say this. It is one of those also, Daniela, of, one, how much are you going to pay for a contractor? Could you be better off maybe getting a part-time person to come work with you? If you do get a consultant come in, and like I said, I've worked with a lot of consultants in my career that chief information security officers that I've worked with have hired to have analysis done. But you're actually taking time away from me because I've got to go tell them things that I've got to go get interviewed. I've got to go line them up with other people. I've got to go get them documentation. I've got to go do this. And so that's time away from me and my tiny team, my small but mighty teams that could actually have been off doing other things to continue to ensure that the organization is resilient.
Yeah, balance is key. It's something that I think we're still working on across industries.
Oh, yes.
Margaret, in your view, what's one underappreciated risk or opportunity that leaders should be preparing for today?
Um, I do think it's not putting their head in the sand on things that they don't think that can happen to them. Um, I'm just going to say this. Oftentimes, you can hear that something catastrophic happened, and you say, like, I remember after 2 years ago, there was a hurricane that came through North Carolina, and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it kind of just went further inland over to the Asheville area, and Asheville is about 4 hours away from where I live. And I remember a gentleman I was talking to afterwards had said he really wanted to do a hurricane scenario with his leadership, and the leadership was like, no, that's never going to happen, we're too far inland, we don't need to worry about this. And of course the hurricane changed course, and Mother Nature can be cruel, she can be also kind, she can be beautiful, but she can be cruel. And it literally wiped out the area from Charlotte on over to Asheville. And they were he was trying to say, like, okay, now you won't do it. But then after the event, the senior leadership was like, yes, let's do an earthquake one. And the thing that's interesting is it's very important to go through all these what ifs because, people think that we as a society are so resilient that, we don't have to worry about power outages or flooding or this or that. But you know what? We do. We still have to worry about that. And so I think that it's very important to run through these scenarios with everybody to make sure that they're understanding it. And Daniela, you hit the nail on the head when you said about how we are small teams. It's not just the business resiliency teams that are small, it's everybody else in your organization that's working with small teams. And so, what do you do if it's that team of two or three people? Daniela, you're on holiday, somebody's out sick, and then it's just me
Yep.
that's got to do it. Can I do the job of three people with just me? And how do we do that? And then, the other thing that I always find interesting, and everyone's like, well, we don't need to worry. And I'm just going to say human resources. Human resources is the same. It's just rinse and repeat. Well, they don't handle human resources the same globally. It's done differently in Latin America, EMEA, and Asia. So if
For sure.
anybody says that we can just, do a rinse and repeat on something, I challenge you because I've never been able to do rinse and repeat. And I have worked at global organizations my entire career. I worked one place and I've worked mostly financial services. I think we had 45 fund accounting applications. I'm like, so how do I ask a fund accountant in Latin America to balance the US books? I can't because it's different systems, different
Right.
IDs. So that's where I say, let senior leadership know that they need to listen to the resiliency people and also look at the horizon scanning that's provided. BCI does one, World Economic Forum, most of your business continuity management vendors do them. Look and see what's happening in your backyard, what's happening in your global footprint, what's happening to your competitor, what's happened to other people in your backyard. Think about what you want to be prepared for and never assume that can't happen to us.
That's the moment it will happen to us.
Yes.
I love what you say about the rinse and repeat. I had a pretty recent interaction with that, and I got the directive, rinse and repeat, and I'm just fussing and I'm fussing. I'm like, I don't, how can we do that? It doesn't make sense. Like, it's a totally different event. It just, and when I went back to that person, they're like, you're correct. It's not exactly a rinse and repeat. And I was like, yeah, I should have just mentioned that like hours ago instead of trying to fuss to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
But yeah, that comes with experience and just kind of knowing in your gut that you really can't do a one size fits all. So thank you for that reminder. If you had to give one piece of advice to future resilience professionals, what would it be?
Yeah. Come join the profession. It is fun. It is exciting. We are a great group of people. But, we're a large global network, but yet in many ways, we are a small, intimate group of people. And I think that with the technologies today, and for example, not only is Doniella hosting the Global Resilience Exchange, but the first Thursday of every month at about 8:15 a.m. Central or Eastern time, excuse me, she hosts the Continuity Coffee Chat. I mean, like, there are so many people on that Zoom every month that it's unbelievable. And I just have to say that we also have the capability through LinkedIn and all these other means to be able to connect with people. And so, again, like I'm fortunate, I've worked for a global organization, but say you're all of a sudden now doing something in a part of the world that you have never done anything with, go have a virtual coffee with somebody to go ask, the ins and outs of doing something. Or if you've never done anything big, and you want some advice on how to go do it. I don't know of anybody in my network who, if I said, hey, could I get together with you for 30 minutes? I got a question for you about something, that they are not going to find time to get on the phone with me.
When you're right, you're right. I think about my friends and how it's kind of closed and different, and I'm excited to go to conferences. I'm like, I get to go hang with the homies, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "You guys don't have that? That doesn't work. It doesn't work the same everywhere else." So I do think this is a very special community, from what I'm trying to do globally, but even across the states, like you said, that Boston area is really strong. I think Philadelphia is phenomenal, with their network, and then I've done it in the city before, and so I think there's just so many opportunities to connect what the ACP is doing, what BCI is doing, what DRI is doing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many groups and there's things popping up all the time, and it's becoming more accessible. So it's definitely to someone's advantage to come in now, right? Future professionals come in now and connect.
Yes.
You may get a hey, not yet, but it's never a no when someone's wanting to meet with you or you want to meet with them. So I think that's really
Very true.
awesome. Um, what does resilience mean to you personally, and how has that definition changed over time?
Um, Personally, to me, it means being happy. I need to be happy where I am working. I'm not a comedian, but I do think that in my 8 hours at the office, we need to have fun. This is a very serious subject matter because it can be, that heavy gray cloud of like, hey, we got to make sure the place stays in business, the lights stay on, that we're meeting the regulatory, we're meeting the audit requirements, the client requirements. It's like, that's a lot of pressure on those shoulders. But it's important to have fun with your teams. And personally, I think it's important for you, like I said at the beginning, Daniela, is to realize this is a job. You do need to step away. You do need to take care of yourself. When you're running major events, you do need to set some boundaries with leadership. And I mean this because, like, I'll never forget during the pandemic, we were working like morning, noon, and night, like most business continuity professionals. And, I'm hearing everybody's running, saying they're going to Target to go get toilet paper. And I'm like, I gotta run to Target too, And so, like, take care of yourself. And I think the other thing that is really important that I've learned over my career is, I didn't always have the best health habits, Daniela, so I've improved on those of make sure that I'm eating right, that I am exercising. And the other thing that's really difficult. I think that, I've been working from home ever since COVID, where at least in an office, you had to get up to maybe go to the next conference room, or, walk further to get to the restroom or to the kitchen. Make sure that if you're working from home, that you are not sitting from 9 to 5 at your computer, that you are taking care of yourself.
That's
Um,
tough.
and, and, make sure that also just because you're at home doesn't mean that you should now be logging in at 7 a.m. and working till 7 p.m. you need to make sure that you're still setting those boundaries for yourself. And I think the other thing that's just still really, really important is because we don't always have the opportunity in this day and age to get to a conference due to financial circumstances at our organizations, that you do reach out and do those virtual things with people because you still need to stay connected with people. And it has to be beyond those that are at your place of employment. You need to learn what others are doing and you need to get their perspective on how things are being done. Like an example of that would be, for example, this summer, in the United States and parts of Canada and Latin America, you got World Cup. So, what happens if you're in a city that's going to be hosting one of those games? What do you need to be doing in order to prepare for that? Reach out to folks, but don't remember just because the games are going to be taking place over the next, 3 weeks at the end of June into July or however long the games are, you still need to have a life during that time if something's happening in your city.
For sure, for sure. And it's been with the Olympics coming and going for those who are in global companies, that has been interesting. I know when it was in France, there was definitely some protests and transportation issues. And I think Italy just started a strike. They were kind enough to wait till after the Olympics, but it was brewing that whole time. And
It
those are the
was.
things you have to be aware of. So definitely there's opportunities to learn from other events as well, right?
Yes.
What role do you think cross-cultural or international collaboration plays in building resilience? You talked about being in Ireland. You talked about living on both coasts of the US, working with Latin America and things like that. So, what do you think about cross-cultural or international collaboration?
I think that a lot of organizations today, Daniela, don't talk about the cultural differences. They just assume, like, corporate headquarters is here, therefore, this is what we all do. Um, I have been fortunate in my life to have traveled a lot personally and professionally. And I do think you do need to understand what the cultural differences are. For example, I know if I'm going to Asia, I should bring a token gift because it's part of the culture. Um, I know I'm a fast talker. However, when I am doing things globally with my audience, I try and slow it down so that they can understand. I may do some of my meetings a little bit longer for some of my international folks. I realize that business continuity management means different things to folks in different parts of the world. So I need to
Yep.
maybe help level set with them. I remember years ago when I first started doing a lot more work with Asia, they were more just focused on disaster recovery. The business continuity side haven't even entered into their foray. So it's helping educate and bring them along and helping folks understand that my approach, you know, might not be suitable for where you are. So I'm going to say this that the old adage of great minds think alike is not necessarily always true, and you do
Mm.
need to get people in with different perspectives. And I also always recommend that when you are doing anything at your organization and you work for a global company, get representatives from like just one or two key of your key stakeholders in some of those regions to participate before you go live with something because how I define something maybe in a PowerPoint deck on slide 5 might not be understood by everybody in a certain region. So do yourself that favor of doing the pilot and making sure that you work with folks. And I have to say this, there is a world of difference if you have the opportunity to go meet people in person. I can do as many Zooms as possible with you. But once I have actually sat across from you at the table and maybe had a cup of coffee or we went out for dinner, my gosh, you're going to get so much more of let me send that email, let me pick up the phone, let me send you a Slack message. It does make a world of difference. So try really hard with your executive leadership to go get a business trip to wherever your key constituents are, because that face to face really does hit home and solidifying that relationship with your peers.
I couldn't agree more and talked about this on the channel previously of building relationships. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? And understanding that relationships can be built differently in different parts of the world,
Yes.
to be mindful of that. So definitely can appreciate that. If you could go back and give your younger self one lesson about resilience, what would it be?
The profession or just resilience in general?
You choose. I mean, I was thinking resilience in general, but it could be about the profession.
Um, I think that we as resilience professionals, um, I'd say I'd like to see us hit harder to the executive leadership team. I'm going to say this, Daniela. I've been in this for 30 years. We don't really still have that C-suite seat. I mean, we might have here or there in organizations a chief resiliency officer, but they literally are buried under some other C person. So they're at the kids' table. Let's put it that way for a holiday analogy. They're at the kids' table. They're not at the grown-up table. I really do think that it's important that they have that seat at the table because there's so much that rides on making sure that the organization understands resilience. We can talk about organizational resilience and operational resilience, but we are still the glue that makes everything stick together at a company. We have a lot of data that people within the organization want because nobody else has collected it all. I can't
Yep.
tell you how many times I've had people come to me saying, "Hey, could you tell me about this office or that continent or this country or whatever?" And I have the information. I think the other thing that they just really need to understand is that we are making sure that we're bringing in business. Like I said, I've worked for a lot of companies that we provide goods and services to organizations that are, household names, and they want to make sure that there's yes, yes, yes to all these business continuity questions. And the moment you're starting to say no, they could be sitting there saying, like, gosh, the contract's up for renewal. Should I renew with that organization or should I go shop elsewhere? So, you're helping bring in business. So the other thing I tell people is tell them the value add. Like if you go do a presentation to the ABC company and they signed on the dotted line for $2 million, tell that back to top management that you did that plus all these other organizations that you helped to stay compliant for these rules and regs. And don't forget that you can tie into cybersecurity with 27001. A lot of organizations are certified towards that. And that we're helping make sure that this part of the world or this part of the country is being compliant with their local regulators because we were able to say yes to all these business continuity, crisis management, disaster recovery questionnaires. So I do say that you, as the continuity professional, need to put on your marketing and hat and say, here's what we bring to the table, and this is why we are the go-to team to make sure that we're going to continue to, bring in new business, keep the renewals coming along, and making sure that we're keeping the regulators at arm's bay. Because, I have had the regulators come in and live with me, not for something I did, but something the organization did. And it's like, it's like tiptoeing around, like, don't say anything on the third floor because the Securities and Exchange Commission's here. And it's like, or don't say anything in the elevator because you never know who's next to you. So, that's where I would say of get out there and tell your leadership, like, hey, we are very, very meaningful to the organization. And, the other thing, Daniela, you just talked about the Olympics and it's a side note, but I've worked at organizations where we have been in locations where the Olympics have been held, and I've been able to show the value out of going through and preparing them those lines of business. Like there's 16 days at the games. So say, you earn $1 million a day. Do you want to lose $16 million, or do you want to give me some money to run through some preparedness so that if something happens, that we can move operations from location A to location B, and I can do this for a fraction of that $1 million a day revenue.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, thanks for bringing that full circle. I think it's important. Marketing is important. That was one of our major topics for the January 2026 continuity coffee and chat. And it came from a different point of view, but I think the solution is marketing and advocacy about what we are bringing to the table. There's
Yeah.
no reason that you would hire someone or keep them on the payroll if you didn't know what they were doing for you. And
Correct.
so we have to use that mindset. Yes, we know we're awesome and we're doing the things, but if no one knows that, it
Yeah,
makes it a
out of
little bit
sight, out of
difficult to
mind.
sign a check. Yeah, yeah. So there's a relevance there for sure that I think we cannot miss that opportunity to, the humble brag or just that notification, the recaps. We're doing our after actions anyway. So who does that go to?
Well, the other
And
thing,
is it just
Daniela, I try and tell people is, hopefully your leadership team's still having all hands, whether it be your division or the senior leadership. But like, say your company did have locations in Milan. Well, in the March all hands, they should say, hey, let's give a shout out to Daniela and the resiliency team for getting us through those 2 weeks at the Olympic Games without a issue. That was 15 seconds.
Yep.
a 15-second soundbite. And you might have to be the one that writes it to give to the CEO or the CTO to go say, but you know what? It's worth it to get the kudos.
I think so. I agree. I totally agree. There's opportunities there that we're not taking advantage of.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. So, Margaret, we have come to the time where we're going to do rapid fire. So,
Okay.
um, don't think too much about it.
Oh,
Whatever
oh,
comes
come
to
on.
your mind first.
Okay.
I have about 5 questions for you, and I'm just going to
Okay.
keep going. No, none of me ad-libbing in between, just all you, okay?
Okay.
So
Go.
here we go. What have you read that we should read?
Okay, I'm kind of bad on that, Danielle. I don't read as much as I used to, but I am a news junkie, so I am always scanning the headlines on NPR, CNN, the BBC. I'm looking at DRJ. I'm looking at Business Continuity Institute. I'm looking at what's on LinkedIn. I'm reading the articles. I'm reading what the vendors post. So that is what I'm going to say. My top of mind is I got bad. I haven't read a book in a while, so but I still read a lot. So
That definitely counts. That definitely counts. So
yeah,
news media is important to you.
yeah.
What have you listened to that we should listen to?
Oh, well, I'm gonna say this. I listen to a whole host of music. I grew up listening to like, the Broadway shows. I'm definitely a child of the 80s. So I will listen to that. I love classical music. And I am a huge YouTube fan. And so yeah, I listen to a lot of different types of music. And I'm gonna say it just depends on what mood I'm in. And but my favorite will go back to always be U2 and Burt Bacharach.
Okay, perfect. What have you watched that we should watch?
So I just finished watching on Netflix, Lead Children, and it's kind of a heavy subject. It's about this woman who's in Poland, and I think it was the 1980s. They never really said the time, but she's trying to research this uh, lead plant and why all these children are getting sick and how nobody wanted to listen to her to try and make the children get well and just what happened to her and the children. And it was very interesting. And so I always gravitate towards things that are based on, real, true, you know, things that happen to real people in this world because I'm always um, amazed at what some people have to overcome to continue to want to put one foot forward day after day after day. And I give tremendous amount of credit to people that can get up and try and continue to make a difference, even though the odds are stacked against them.
That's a big deal. This one's a little bit fun. What is the song, book, or movie that would be your life's theme or anthem?
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
All right. And last but not least, what are 2 words that express your feelings about today's interview or the Global Resilience Exchange?
Um, I'm going to say thank you because Daniela, I think that you do so much for this profession. And I am not just saying that because I am a guest on this podcast, but you truly have been a game changer within this industry. And I am grateful for all that you do to get people of all parts of the world to participate and to bring everybody forward to have a better understanding that we really are a small community and we have a lot to give back and we have a lot of great ideas. So please keep doing what you're doing. And if there ever comes a point in time that you decide that you want to hang it up, please get a succession plan in place for somebody else to take over. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Margaret, it's been a pleasure having you today, folks. If you liked what Margaret had to say, please give this video a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe to the channel. More interviews will be coming. And share this video. Share it on LinkedIn. Share it with your colleagues. And you can find Margaret on LinkedIn. So I will add her URL to the description so that you can connect with her. Like she said, she loves to do coffee chats. She may not be available immediately, but she'll let you know. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to another episode on the Global Resilience Exchange channel. My name is Doniella McKoy. It's been great being your host. Margaret, thank you again. Any last words?
Have a wonderful day, everybody, and keep tuning in to learn more about how we can make the resiliency profession continue to remain awesome and fun and wanting to be still active in it.
Perfect. Take care, everyone.